Live from London, this is BBC News. Momentum builds behind a push to see Western warplanes sent to Ukraine as UK and Dutch leaders agree to raise support. President Biden is to cut short a tour of Asia to focus on the US debt default crisis, with emergency talks ending with no resolution. Police in New Zealand are now treating a deadly hostel fire as arson and have launched a murder inquiry. And the first full-size 3D scan of the Titanic shows the wreck as it's never been seen before, revealing secrets hidden on the ocean floor for more than a century. Hello, I'm Lucy Gray. A major gathering of European leaders is taking place in Iceland, and Ukraine has been front and centre of discussions. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron and the British Prime Minister are among the leaders underscoring their support. And Rishi Sunak and the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte have pledged to build an international coalition to provide fighter jet support for Ukraine. Let's speak now to our diplomatic correspondent James Landale, who's in Kyiv for us. Creating a coalition isn't the same as actually promising jets, is it, James? This is a sort of a case of nobody wants to be seen to be the first and only one to provide the jets, but it's positive sounds, isn't it? Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. You're live with BBC News. I'm Lucy Gray. Police in New Zealand say that they are now treating a deadly fire at a hostel in Wellington as arson. 6 people died in the fire at the Loafers Lodge building in Wellington in the early hours of Tuesday morning. A homicide investigation is now underway. Well, let's talk live now to Grace Thomas, a reporter from TVNZ. And what more can you tell us about what happened, Grace? Right, that's all from me for now. There's plenty more on all the stories that we're covering on our website. Just go to BBC News and you can see plenty more on Rebecca's piece there on the Titanic. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can. I'm on Twitter at Lucy E. Gray. Thanks very much for watching. Don't go away.
Now on BBC News, the latest business news from across the globe. World Business Report.
Live from London, this is BBC News. A Brexit warning. One of the world's biggest car makers calls on the British government to review its EU trade deal. As a potential US debt default creeps closer, President Biden meets congressional leaders to find a way out. And with British supermarket prices spiralling fast, Rishi Sunak promises more seasonal visas for farming. Hello and welcome to BBC News. I'm Tadhg Enright with the day's top business stories. One of the world's biggest car makers has called on the British government to renegotiate part of the Brexit deal, warning that otherwise there could be significant job losses in its UK operations. Stellantis, which makes Vauxhall, Peugeot, Citroën and Fiat, had committed to making electric cars in the UK, but it now says it will struggle to meet Brexit trade rules without incurring EU import taxes when sourcing car parts. Our economics editor Faisal Islam has the story. Samira Hussain reporting there. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. You're live with BBC News. To the Eurozone now, where the latest inflation numbers are due in the next couple of hours. The data will be vital for the European Central Bank to assess its next move on the cost of borrowing, with its next decision due in the middle of June. This month, they raised the interest rate to 3.25% in a bid to tackle rising prices, which were climbing by 6.9% in the year to March. Well, let's speak now to Klaus Vistisen, who's Chief Eurozone Economist at Pantheon Macroeconomics. Thanks for being with us today, Klaus. What are your expectations? Are we expecting good or bad news when the data finally comes out? In other business today, Japan's economy has grown much more than expected in the first quarter of the year. It's up by 0.4% in the previous quarter, 1.6% at an annualised rate. Inbound tourism and consumer spending have been the biggest boosts for growth. The country's delayed reopening from the COVID pandemic saw consumers wanting to make up for lost time, but prices are also rising at the fastest rate for 4 decades. Cryptocurrency trading should be regulated in the same way as gambling, rather than as a financial service. This according to a panel of British MPs. In a report released today, the UK Parliament's Treasury Committee says the government must avoid wasting more taxpayer funds promoting tech innovations such as digital tokens without demonstrating the clear benefits to the public, and that, like gambling, cryptocurrency trading and investing can be addictive. And a former Apple engineer has been charged with stealing the company's self-driving car technology almost 5 years after he fled to China. Prosecutors accuse Weibo Wang of stealing thousands of files containing proprietary information while secretly working for an unnamed Chinese company. 6 counts of theft or attempted theft of trade secrets are in the indictment. Let's have a look at the markets before I go. European markets opening within the next hour, but this is how Asian markets have been faring today. Bit of a mixed picture with investors there digesting the economic data from Japan. The focus world over also on those debt ceiling negotiations in the United States. And here is how Wall Street closed on the day that investors were reflecting on comments from a member of the Fed warning that rates could have to stay higher for longer to control inflation. Stay with us here on BBC News. Lucy Gray is back in a few minutes with your top stories.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Momentum builds behind a push to see Western warplanes sent to Ukraine as UK and Dutch leaders agree to drum up support. President Biden will cut short a tour of Asia to focus on the US debt default crisis, with emergency talks ending with no resolution. Police in New Zealand are now treating a deadly hostile fire as arson and have launched a murder inquiry. The UN launching a new plan in response to the refugee crisis triggered by the conflict in Sudan. And the first full-size 3D scan of the Titanic shows the wreck as it's never been seen before, revealing secrets hidden on the ocean floor for more than a century. Hello, I'm Lucy Gray. A major gathering of European leaders is taking place in Iceland, and Ukraine has been discussed heavily. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron and the British Prime Minister are among the leaders underscoring their support. And Rishi Sunak and the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte have pledged to build an international coalition to provide fighter jet support for Ukraine. I've been speaking to our diplomatic correspondent James Landale, who's in Kyiv. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. You're watching BBC News. Now, some news to bring you from Italy. At least 2 people have died and hundreds have been rescued after heavy rain caused severe flooding across the Emilia-Romagna region of northern Italy. Officials have been responding to hundreds of incidents, including stranded motorists and people trapped on their roofs as rivers burst their banks and flooded homes. We'll bring you more on that situation as it develops. The head of the company behind the artificial intelligence tool ChatGPT has told lawmakers in the US that government regulation is crucial to keep the industry safe. We've seen tech CEOs get a congressional grilling before, but that's not what happened here. Appearing before a Senate panel, Sam Altman said that AI could be as significant as the invention of the printing press, claiming that it had the potential to improve nearly every aspect of our lives. But he admitted the technology also poses serious risks. Now here's some pretty sensational footage from the island of Oahu in Hawaii. It shows the moment a shark attacked a man who was fishing in his kayak. Now, Scott Haraguchi amazingly emerged from the incident unscathed. Here it is again. He later posted the video of what happened on social media and said that he thought it was a turtle before realising what it actually was. God, pretty extraordinary. Anyway, that's all from me for now. Do stay with us here on BBC News. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.
Hello there. We've got two areas of high pressure